Before I talk about the thesis writing, if you want to ask a question, please go ahead. Bahadur, when you have the quantitative data, then it can be your correlational survey research or it can be your experimental research. But if you have the qualitative data, then your research should be philosophical, it will be historical, but in historical there might be small quantitative data also. The descriptive correlation, there you will have qualitative data as well as quantitative data. And case study also you will have qualitative data as well as quantitative data. So that's what you should try to understand. Is it okay? Bahadur, is that all right, or you have to ask a question? Okay, any other participant like to ask question? Please write in the chat box, otherwise I will start. I think there is no question. Let us start. Till yesterday, I was talking about how to write the research paper. And in the research paper, I did not explain how to write the references. I will explain when I am talking about the thesis. The same thing will be used there. Another point which I did not talk about the language, about some of the precautions which you have to take or the points to be kept in the mind while writing the research paper or the thesis. So I start with points to be kept in mind while writing research paper and thesis. So the point which now I will be telling, that you have to keep in mind whether you are writing a research paper or you are writing a thesis, it doesn't matter, because these points are common. And I'm not giving these points in any sequence. Okay, as in when they come to my mind, I keep on telling you. See, number one is you should be very careful about the language and the style. Now these days, you know that people do write in Hindi, in regional languages, as well as in English. And I don't know what is your experience. My experience is that most of the time, there are large number of language mistakes. So therefore, we have to be very, very careful. So whenever you are right, you should write in very simple sentence. Write it in simple sentence, not complicated. Many people are not very efficient in writing in simple sentences. They normally write the complex sentences. Some people find it easy to write complex sentences, but for the reader, the simple sentences are easy to understand in comparison to the complex sentences. Because in complex sentences, in one sentence, you are giving many information. So as a reader, when you are reading, quite possible you might be not having the same level of concentration. The point on which you have a concentration, you may understand, and the point on which you lose the concentration, you may not understand. But if you are writing a simple sentence, then it is easy to understand because it conveys only one information at a time. So therefore, this is very, very important. Another is that you should avoid using the long term. Should avoid using the long terms. Let me give you the examples. I'm giving you the long term here. And here I'm giving the short term. So say the long term is, it starts somewhere during the time that. Now the short term will be while. So it's better to use the word while rather than during the time that. Another example is from the standpoint of view. Now, in place of this, it's better to write according to. Now, I'm not giving these terms in Hindi, I don't know. Another, in all cases. So it's better to write always. Then another is in order to. So we should write to. No need of writing in order to. I'll give you one or two more examples. Another in terms of. We should write in, and then we should write further. In view of the fact. Then we should write since, because. One more I will tell you and then I'll close. At the present time, we can write now. We can write now, or we can write at present. Now, these are some of the long words, and I have given you some short words because many a time you are asked to write in a fixed number of the words. So at that point of time, such type of, say, the things will help you. Now, another is that you have to write that precision. Now, many a times it has been found that the researcher, they write such type of sentences which are not precise because the meaning is not coming out. So therefore, you have to be very, very precise so that there is no confusion in understanding what you want to say. Now, in precision, do not use the word words like many, a few, good, often, normal, majority. Such words do not use. Why? Because what is majority? According to you, 5 may be majority. According to somebody else, 300 might be majority. So this majority doesn't have a very definite meaning. So that's very important. Now, so this is a normal situation. What is normal situation? According to you, it may be a normal. According to somebody else, the same situation may not be a normal situation. So such words, they do not convey the precise meaning, and therefore there is a lot of confusion among the researchers, and therefore it's always better that you should be very, very careful. Then another is, whenever you have to represent your mean and standard deviation, then you should know up to what decimal point that you should represent them. In social sciences, our tools are not very sensitive. And because the tools are not very sensitive, therefore it is not advisable to represent the mean and standard deviation up to 4 decimal point or 5 decimal point. It's always better to represent them at the most only up to 2 decimal points. But in science, because the instruments which they use are very sensitive, so there you can represent up to 4 decimal point, up to 5 decimal point, depending upon the instrument used. Otherwise, here you cannot. So therefore, indicate mean, standard deviation, mean, standard deviation, correlation, etc. up to 2 decimal points. Your SPSS gives you the output up to 4 decimal point. So from the 4 decimal point, you can convert them into the 2 decimal point. But when you are converting, suppose the mean reported in the SPSS is 12.368. Then this can be approximately written as 12.37, because the third place you have 8, which is more than 5. So therefore, the digit before that will be increased by 1. But if you have mean is equal to 12.103, then this will be only 12.10. You cannot say 12.11. So this is how you should approximate. If your correlation value as it is given is equal to, let's say, 0.962, then this will be equal to 0.96. But if your correlation value given is 0.986, then you can write it very well 0.99. But if it is up to, let's say, if it is like this, 0.985, then you cannot write this. You have to write 98. If it is more than 5, then you approximate. So these are the things that you should try to understand. Another important point is a consistency. You know, there are lot of points that you have to consider under consistency. One is when you are representing something by a particular symbol, then you should keep on writing that symbol only. If you have ICT, it is the short form of information communication technology. Information and communication technology. So you should keep on writing ICT, but not as ICT, because its abbreviation is capital ICT. And I have seen sometimes people write small ICT. So that is wrong. Suppose if you are mean, you are denoting it by capital M, then whenever mean comes, you should always write capital M. If you denote standard deviation by sigma, then you should always denote it by sigma. Or if you want to write as SD, that is up to you. If the standard deviation you are denoting by SD, it's fine. If you are denoting by sigma, it's fine, but it has to be only one. If you are writing a paper, it has to be only one, any one you can choose. Or if you are denoting it by small s, actually the sigma denotes the standard deviation of the population, and small s denotes the standard deviation of the sample. But in many of the Indian writers, they have written sigma. And some of your teachers also might have taught you sigma as a symbol to be used for standard deviation. So, well, that you can decide. So this also comes under the consistency. Then another is the use of the third person. You see, when you are writing the thesis or you are writing the paper, you should not use, do not use I, we, she, he, they. etc. Such words should not be used. In place of these, in place of such words, one can use the researcher, or you can use experimenter. You can use the researcher or the experimenter, but you cannot use I, we, he, she, because the more you use such type of things, that means you are subjective. And the thesis writing as well as the paper writing is not subjective, it is objective. So therefore you should not use such type of words. Another is the tense. You see, when you are writing the thesis or you are writing the paper, only very little portion will be written in the present form. Otherwise, the complete paper and the complete thesis should be written in the past tense, not in the present tense. So only introduction portion and description of results from the table can be written in the present tense. Rest should be in the past tense. Why? Because you are reporting only after you have completed your research. You have analyzed your data, you have done everything, and now you are reporting. So that is why it has to be done in the past tense, and you cannot use the future tense. Nowhere the future tense can be used. But dear friends, if you go to Shodh Ganga, you may come across a thesis where the researcher has used the future tense. Recently, I came across a few theses, some theses from the universities where they have written the thesis in the future tense, which is technically wrong. And I have seen many of the titles of the PhD thesis which starts with the word to. So that means the people of that universities, they are not very careful while the title is being approved and while the thesis is being checked and is being written. It is the duty of the guide, because guide has to go through the thesis. So therefore the guide must ensure that the thesis is not written in that form. No, nowhere in hypothesis you cannot write the future tense. Why? Because for formulating hypothesis, there are bases. And whenever there is a base, you cannot write it in the future tense. It has to be written in the present tense. So therefore, hypothesis cannot be, and many of the theses you will find the researcher has written hypothesis in the future tense. And you tend to believe and you tend to think that hypothesis can be written in the future tense. That is wrong, my dear friend. Dear friends, let me tell you very clearly, the more you go through the thesis uploaded in the Shodh Ganga, you will come to know there are too many inconsistencies. And you will come to know that the title of the thesis is incorrect, technically incorrect. In many titles, variable is not mentioned at all. In majority of the titles, the population is not mentioned at all. The wording of the objectives and the wording of the hypothesis are not correct. In many of the theses, in place of hypothesis, they have written research questions. Now, as a researcher, you know the hypothesis means the tentative solution. And research question does not mean the tentative solution. So you cannot write research question in place of hypothesis. In some of the PhD thesis uploaded in the Shodh Ganga, they have written the objective as well as the research questions. What is the sense? So therefore, do not tell that because this is given in the thesis and the degree has been awarded, so it is correct. No, that's wrong. So please, when you see the thesis uploaded in the Shodh Ganga, you have to be very, very, very careful. So your hypothesis, whether you write in the proposal or you write in the paper or you write in the thesis, it must be written in the present form. And I have seen many of the titles in the PhD thesis, they did not use the word significant. And in some of the thesis, they have formulated the hypothesis in the directional form without giving the reason. So you have to be careful about all these type of the things. So therefore, you have to use the tense most of the time when you are writing the research paper or you are writing the thesis, it has to be in the past tense, except some portion of the introduction. And whenever you are giving any information in the table and you are referring to the table, then it is in the present tense, otherwise it's in the past tense. Then another is the heading, caption heading. When you are writing the caption heading, it must be appropriate and it must be according to the objective. When I was writing the caption heading for the paper, I took the objective and then from the wording of the objective, I wrote the caption heading. So therefore, your caption heading must match with your objective. So it must match with the objective for which it is written. Now, you have to sometime give information in the table. For example, when you are writing the methodology chapter, some people, they give information about the sample in tabular form. Otherwise, you have to write the results and interpretation chapter in the thesis and the paper. In that also you have to make the table. So you should give only relevant information in the table. I have seen the people, they just copy the table which you get in the SPSS output. Now from SPSS output, you should not copy it as it is. Why? Because the SPSS output will have lot of information which you may not need and which is not used by you while interpreting the results. So therefore, you should make your own table and do not use the tables which you get in the SPSS. Another is that in SPSS, you know, the structure of the table is fixed. It is not flexible. See, when you analyze your data with the help of ANOVA and ANCOVA, the SPSS output will be exactly similar because the format in which the output is to be given is static. But when you are writing in your thesis, you know that if it is analysis of covariance, then your abbreviation will be different. And if it is your analysis of variance, then abbreviation will be different. So therefore, I'll tell you just for example. So this I'm talking about the table that for ANOVA, your table is something like this. Here it is, source of variance, DF, SS, MSS, and F value. But for ANCOVA, it is not this. For ANCOVA, it should be SS, Y dot X, MSS, Y dot X, and F, Y dot X. So this will be for ANCOVA. So if you are writing SSY dot X, it automatically indicates that you have analyzed the data using ANCOVA technique. But from the SPSS output, it is the same. I can show you and I can definitely, and you will see it is the same. But when you are writing, it should not be the same, it must be different because that both the statistical techniques are different. So therefore, when you are making a table, so do not make complex table. In one table, do not give information related to more than 3 variables. At the most, the information of the 3 variables, you can make a table. But if you have many variables and you want to give the information, it's better to have separate tables so that it is easy to understand and there is no confusion as far as taking out the meaning is concerned. Then another is that whenever you are making a table, so do not give the table before it is mentioned. For example, when I say the data were analyzed, for example, the data were analyzed with the help of t-test and the results are given in table 4.1. Now you can give the table, but do not give the table before you write this particular sentence. Okay, this is important because if you are giving the table first and then writing the sentence, it doesn't make sense. Then another is do not break the table. Sometimes it happens that some portion of the table comes in on one page and another portion of the table comes in another page. So it is advisable, try to reduce the size of the table so that it comes on one page. But if you have a very long table, then it is a different issue. Then it can come on 2 pages. But not many long tables are there. The output of the SPSS is not too long. So therefore, that's another point that you should understand. Then another is the 7th point is graph. Now it is observed, I have seen that people make pie diagram and people make bar diagram and they give it in the chapter of results and interpretation. And they do not use the pie diagram or the bar graph in writing the interpretation. So if you have to give the graph, then the graph must be used for writing the interpretation. Otherwise, do not give the graph. Just giving graph for the sake of graph is of no use. And I have seen many of the theses where the students gives the graph but doesn't use it while writing the interpretation. So no mention is made in the interpretation as far as the graph is concerned. So then why to give graph? I understand that some of the guides, they think if you do not give graph, then it doesn't look nice. My dear friend, thesis is not beauty. The beauty doesn't lie in giving graph or not giving graph. The beauty lies in writing. Whether you are writing it is very precise. I have seen thesis of 80 pages and it was excellent thesis. I have also seen thesis which were in 2 volumes and it was rejected. So my dear friend, do not be under the wrong impression that the long you write, the better it is. No. If you have seen the thesis in science, it's only 80 pages, 70 pages or like that. In education, I have seen a thesis which was of around 80 pages. And I have seen a thesis in education which was in 2 volumes and it was rejected. So please do not understand that the thicker the thesis, the better it is. No, it might be the worst. Because many a times people keep on writing. Let me tell you that when I saw the thesis, they are writing what is hypothesis, what are the types of hypothesis, how to formulate hypothesis, what is a variable, what are the types of the variable. You are not writing a book on the research methodology, my dear friends, but you are writing what you have done and you are reporting that. So therefore, the graph, for the sake of graph, should not be given. Whenever it is given, it must be integrated. It must be integrated with the interpretation. Then another is that do not take research methodology content from the books do not take research methodology from the books while writing the thesis, because in paper normally they do not, but people take in the thesis. As I told you, they write what is a hypothesis, what is a sample, what is population, what is a frame. They will write heading and they will give information. And they will say different sampling techniques, non-probability, probability, then they will explain each and every probability sampling technique. This is not required. And why some of the researchers, they do this? Because they do not know what to write in the thesis. Because they want to have large number of the pages. So in order to achieve that, they mention such type of things. Please do not do it. Then another is, do not give formula. Some people give formula of mean, formula of standard deviation, formula of correlation, and how to compute that also they give. It's not required. No, Bahadur, you cannot research methodology, absolutely no. So do not give the formula in the thesis. Of course, in research paper, people do not give. But in thesis, some people give the formula. That's wrong. Because you are not writing a book on statistics. If you are writing a book on statistics, then it is all right. Otherwise, absolutely it is not required. Then another is that many of the people, there was a time when people used to write footnotes. Now footnotes are not to be written. Do not write footnotes at all. Then another is that there was a time when researchers were writing references after each chapter. But now references are not to be written. In the thesis, you write bibliography, but in paper you write references. So in paper, references, but bibliography is to be written in thesis. What is the difference? I'm sure you must be knowing the difference. Bibliography is equal to references plus the non-referred text. Plus non-referred material. See, you might have read a book by Edward de Bono. and you might have got some idea from that Edward de Bono, but you are not referring it, then it can be given under bibliography, because you have not mentioned in the text of any chapter about the Edward de Bono. No problem, but then you can write it because it is not referred in the thesis, but you have read it and you think it will be very useful for the researchers. So therefore you can write such type of things. Absolutely no problem in that. And my dear friend, in writing the references or bibliography, you know, these days, people follow a particular system of writing the references, and it is called API format. So while writing references as well as APA, American Psychology Association, APA format, it followed. But if you ask me, I'm not in favor of it. Why should we follow APA format? What is the logic? Important is when you are writing the references, you should give the last name, the initial of the writers, you should give the year, you should give the title, you should give the name of the journal, the volume of the journal, the number of the journal, and the pages number. Whether you follow APA format or you do not follow APA format, how does it matter? So I somehow, but some of the universities, they are sticking to the APA format. So my personal view is we should not unnecessarily stick to a particular format. You can have your own format. Each university can have own format, because see, the format will not differ to a great extent. It is only whether you are writing the year after the initials or you are writing the year at the end. It doesn't matter. Whether you are writing, where you are putting colon or you are not putting colon, it doesn't matter much really. But anyway, if your university insists on having the references in the APA format, you can have. But if you ask me my independent opinion, I'm not for it. Because the APA format and our own format is almost the same, not much a difference. Another thing you should know is that these days, some of the people, they will be taking lot of material available online. So when the online material you are taking, then you have to refer to the website. And then when you are writing, of course, I will tell you that will be coming under you write bibliography, how do you write for that? Another important point, my dear friend, is that do not copy from any paper, book, thesis, or online material. From any book, website. Avoid copying. But whenever you are copying, then what you can do is you give the references. Say your chapter number 2, which is titled as Review of Related Literature. This chapter cannot be written without citing the related researches. And when you are citing that, but natural, you cannot change even a single word which that writer had used. I have seen some of the Indian people that what they do is they change the wording in order to avoid the plagiarism. It doesn't come under plagiarism. I don't think the plagiarism has to do anything with this. Plagiarism has to do whether you are verbatim taking something from some book or some thesis. Everyone knows that review of related literature cannot be yours. You have to collect it from different journals and from different theses and different other sources. So that's very, very, very important. And then, of course, as I have said, plagiarism. So because I understand in each and every universities these days that you have to take a certificate from some person who is authorized to give that certificate that this thesis is free from plagiarism, or it has plagiarism only to 5% or this percent or something like that. I hope you are understanding these important points. So these are some of the points that come to my mind and which you have to take care whenever you are writing. Now, I have already talked about the paper writing. Now, I'm talking about the thesis writing. Now, when you are writing the thesis, there has to be a top page. As soon as you see the thesis, there will be top page. And on this particular top page, the information which you have to give is something like this. I'm now, suppose this is the top page, which I'm trying to create it for you. Now this is the page. On this page, here you have to write your title. whatever is the title of your thesis, this is not for writing the paper. This is only for the thesis. So here you have to write the title of, and this title must be the one which has been registered. Because when you have a registration, then you get a letter from the university. And in that letter, the title, approved title of your thesis is mentioned. And the date of registration is mentioned. Name of the guide is mentioned. So therefore, that title you cannot change. Whatever has been registered, it has been registered. Now, so this particular title, you have to write in the capital, not in the running the small letters. No, it has to be the capital. And let me write one. Suppose I say a study of effect of models of teaching on achievement in Hindi of class 7th students of government senior secondary schools of Delhi. Now this I am going to break little bit. So you can write something like this. So this is the title which has been registered and that is given. Then you leave some space and then you write a thesis. Again in the capital letter. A thesis submitted to now here you have to write the name of the university. A thesis submitted to University of Delhi. For the award of degree of doctorate of philosophy in whatever is the subject. If it is education, then you say education. and then you leave some space, and then here you have to write the supervisor. The name you have to write the supervisor, and on this side will be the researcher. And then here you should write the name or address of your research center. If it is the university, then it is you can write the name of the department. If it is some college, whatever it is. So I can write Department of Education, University of Delhi. And then here you have to write the year. If it was 2022, you can write 2022. If it was 2023, you can write that. So this should be your first page. But I remind you, I am giving you a format, but always use the format which is prescribed by the university. Because different universities, they have different formats, but they do not differ too much, but there might be slight change in terms of the font size, in terms of the other things. So this will be your top page. And when your thesis starts, the same page will be once again there, because your top page is a hardbound and your inside page will be your soft page, so that you can write. Now, once you have done this, then after that, then there has to be the certificate which you have to take from your guide. That is very important. So therefore, you have to put the so here is a certificate from the guide. Guide or supervisor. Sometimes you may have more than one supervisor, then you should write supervisors. Or if you have only one supervisor, then you write supervisor. If you do not want to write supervisor, you want to write guide, you can write guide, no problem at all. It's not a very difficult thing. And there is a format available, the wording of the letter available, which has to be typed and it has to be signed by your guide. And your guide has to say that this is to certify that such and such work on this problem, which is original. Okay, and then he signs. and he or she has worked under my guidance or my supervision. So there is a format where you only have to write the title, the name of your guide, not more than that. Rest of the things, as the university has given, you have to type it as it is. So this will be the one complete page. After this particular page, then as a guide, as a researcher, you have to write acknowledgement. Now, in this acknowledgement, it is 100% the freedom of the researcher. Normally, the researcher acknowledges the help given by the dean, given by the supervisor, given by the other teachers or maybe fellow researchers, the librarian, and if you have collected the data from the field, then the people from the field, from the school or colleges from where you have collected the data. And you may like to acknowledge even your parents. You have a freedom, absolutely. But it is normally the dean of the faculty is to be acknowledged, the guide is to be acknowledged, the librarian is to be acknowledged, and the people from whom you have collected the data, they are to be acknowledged. And if you have got your thesis typed outside, if you have not typed it yourself, then that person needs acknowledgement. And apart from that, if you want to acknowledge some of your friends or some of your relatives, some of your parents, it all entirely your. The guide will not say anything, and then it has to be signed. And each letter, there must be a date and there must be a signature. So here also, once you have written the acknowledgement, then you also have to write the date and put your signature. Now, once all these pages are done, then next, the page that will be there will be the content. And this page is very, very important. So the next page will be the content. Now here in this content, the important is you have a certificate, because you have given the certificate. There is a certificate page. Whatever is the page number that you have to write, here you have to write the number. And normally it will be in italics. Then it is the acknowledgement. And it will maybe from you can write this, or you can write just like this. These are the two things that you have to put. Now you have to give what was your first chapter. Now, when you are writing the chapter 1, it is to be in the Roman 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. After that, it will be now, when you are saying chapter number 1, in this particular chapter, there will be many main headings as well as there will be subheadings. So when you are writing the chapter number 1 and chapter number 2, and chapter 3, chapter 4, chapter 5, etc., etc., in how many chapters you will be writing the thesis, it's not fixed. It varies. So you as a researcher can decide how many chapters you have to have. Many a times I'll tell you that review of related literature, it is not review of literature. In many of the PhD theses, they are writing review of literature, which is technically wrong. You cannot review the complete literature. You have to review only the related one. Which is not related, that should not be the part of your thesis. But many times the researchers do not think deeply before they write the headings. So you have to think it carefully and deeply whether this heading will be appropriate or some other heading will be appropriate. I'm giving you the headings, but if you want to change, well, it's up to you. You can change, no problem at all. So you are normally the first chapter heading will be introduction. This is the normal trend of writing the first chapter as an introduction. And normally the second chapter is review of related literature. And normally your third chapter will be methodology. Some people, they write chapter 3 as plan and procedure. Well, that's up to you. There was a time when people were writing plan and procedure, but these days people do not write plan and procedure, they write the methodology. Okay, so let me give only these chapters heading today, and that I will see the next. Now, in chapter number 1, you are 1.1.0. This will be the introduction. Whenever this number 1 represents the chapter number 1, and this another one represents the first main caption, because I have put 0. And when it is 0, it has to be capital. So this will be the introduction of this particular chapter. Now, in the same way, in the second chapter also, you will be having what is called 2.1.0, again introduction. In the third one also, you again will be having 3.1.0, again introduction. Now, important is when you are writing the introduction, why should we write the introduction? We write introduction so that as a researcher, when I read this, I come to know what all information is being given in this particular chapter. So if I see the content, then I know on which page, which information is given. So the purpose of introduction is only this. Another purpose of introduction is this introduction link acts as a link between the two chapters. When you are writing the introduction for the second chapter, then your second chapter must be related with the first chapter. You should make a mention of the first chapter. How it is to be done, I will tell you. When you are writing the third chapter, the third chapter must be linked with the second chapter. When you are writing fourth chapter, then it must be linked with the third chapter, and so on and so forth, so that you see the whole thesis as one. You do not see like compartments. Now, they are just one. Now, then this I will write, and no problem. So 1.2.0. Now, here you have to write some of the captions which will help you to develop the theoretical framework. I repeat, maybe you are 1.2.0, 1.3.0, and maybe you like to have 1.4.0. All these are in order to develop the theoretical frame. Because without understanding the theoretical frame, you will not be able to appreciate why this research was done. So the theoretical frame is very, very, very important. And my dear friend, I have found in many of the PhD theses, the theoretical frame is very, very weak. And in some of the theses, they have written under such headings which are not relevant at all. But because they want to have more pages and more pages, that is why they have done that. Now, if I tell you what you can write, if I take this as my, here my is a study of effect of models of teaching on achievement in Hindi. So this particular one is related to the models of teaching. So I can write my one heading can be the present status of teaching Hindi. So this is the one heading I can write, that how are we teaching Hindi at present. Then I may write something about my dear friend. Here I'm changing little bit. I'm saying it is concept attainment model. So concept attainment model on achievement. And let me take out this, and then you see here a study of effect of concept attainment model on achievement in Hindi. If this is the one, then I should write one can be present status of teaching Hindi. Then I can write, if you know the different methods of teaching concepts, okay, or otherwise you can talk something about the models of teaching. And then you can write the concept attainment model. Now, if you want to write more, well, that's up to you. Otherwise, these three will be perfectly all right. They will fit into it. Then 1.5.0. After you have written these things, then you should be able to write rational. Some people write rational as a heading. Some people write need and importance. Some people write significance. Significance of the study. So there are different people write differently. But if you ask me, the rational is the most appropriate one. But well, that depends upon you. I have seen some people, they in fact write rational and they also write the significance of the study. There's no sense of writing both. Some people, they are writing need and importance as well as the rational. Why should you write both? There is no need. Now, once you have written this, then 1.6.0 will be statement of problem. And this has to be exactly the one which you have written at the top. Then it is objectives. And if you are doing either a correlational survey study or experimental study, then you must write hypothesis. And then it is 1.9.0 will be delimitation. I have seen people write both limitations as well as delimitation. There is no sense of writing limitation, because once you write delimitation, automatically it will reflect the limitations. Now, these are some of the caption headings under which you will be writing the chapter number 1. I hope you have understood it up to here. Whenever I take class, then I will move ahead with the other headings and will give you the complete information. Any question you want to ask before I say bye-bye to you? Any question? I'm waiting for your question if there is a question, otherwise, thank you very much. If there is no question. Okay, if no question, then thank you. Yes, directional hypothesis and alternate hypothesis are same. All right, then thank you. See you next time whenever I meet you.